Most people in Texas today who now live in urban areas believe that as long as they go in the kitchen and turn on the tap and the water comes out, or go in the bathroom and flush the toilet and it works, that everything's okay. And we've got to shake people out of that mindset, because this is the single greatest challenge in my judgment, certainly from a natural resource standpoint, facing the coming generation. It's a big deal in Texas, and we should make no mistake about that. Our population is going to double in the next 50 years, and yet we have already given permission for more water to be withdrawn from many of our rivers, like this one, than is actually in them today. Such that if all those water rights were actually exercised, some of the most important and iconic rivers in Texas would be completely dry. And yet we're going to have to find water for twice as many people in the generation ahead. We tend to believe that we can build our way out of this problem. After the drought of the 1950s, we went on a binge here in Texas, and really throughout the Southwest, to build a lot of stuff. Reservoirs, dams, pipelines, big infrastructure. And frankly, that system has served us well. We have in Texas, for example, almost 200 reservoirs that were built since the 1950s. And so what we're going to be hearing in the months and weeks ahead is that all we need to do is come up with about $53 billion to build some more stuff, and this will be okay. And I think the most important message that we can get out is that simply won't do it. That many of the most significant hurdles that we're going to have to overcome are not infrastructure, they're policy. The issue has been largely the exclusive province of what I call the usual suspects. Those are civil engineering firms, municipal water districts, large interests like utilities that depend on large quantities of water to cool their power plants. And so there's been a relatively narrow segment of society that has really engaged in the water issue. In my mind, one of the most important things we can do going forward is to involve other segments of society in the conversation. Everybody lives downstream from somebody else. And one of the things that we really have to remember is that as we try to resolve these water issues, that, for example, if you live in Houston and the water that you drink comes from the Trinity River, every drop of it has already gone through the wastewater treatment systems of Dallas and Fort Worth. And so even the act of disposing of the water that we've used back into the system has an impact on our neighbor that lives downstream of us, in addition to flows remaining into our bays and estuaries. People are going to be increasingly saying, okay, well, this will be okay if we just reuse all the water that's going through our system, say in the Metroplex. But the fact is, we have to remember that not only the people downstream of us, but the environment along our coast is dependent on those return flows back into the system. And so we've got to be very careful when we think about both the quality of water that we discharge back into the system, but also a sufficient flow to serve the needs of people and the environment downstream.